In this presentation, we will set up a new company file. We will approach this as if we are a bookkeeper setting up a new file on the desktop for a new customer, a new client. But the same principles would apply if this is our company file that we're setting up and we're trying to organize this information in a systematic way. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info. We have now gotten engagement with a new client, and what we have here is the first bank reconciliation. So this will be the bank reconciliation that we will start at this point entering data into. It happens to be the bank reconciliation for January at this time. Doesn't necessarily have to be that the case. We could have the first bank reconciliation being whatever time period that we decide to start entering the data. However, note that if we are starting in the middle of the year, we're going to have some information that won't be within the system, and we're either going to have to get that information if we need year-end tax preparations or financial statements for an entire year, possibly for tax preparation from a different system, or we're going to have to enter that data in for the entire year. So if we have a client that wants us to enter information into the middle of the year for the new client, then note that it may be, or we need to have a plan for how we're going to get that information for the first part of the year for end of the year tax preparation, and possibly that would mean that we should enter the data in for that entire year starting at January, even if we are at the middle of the year at this point in time. In this case, that's what we're going to do. We're going to enter the data in starting in January and enter the data going forward from there. The piece of documentation is the bank statement that has been provided to us. We're going to use that to just start entering data, set up our QuickBooks file. Before we set up the QuickBooks file, we're going to enter this into a folder and just organize our folder on our desktop or on our computer for this company data. For the demonstration, we're going to put this on the desktop so we have the new customer, and we can get the name, of course, when we discuss with the customer and probably from the bank statement. So we have the bank statement, and we're going to say that the name is going to be Guitar Lessons and Equipment. So we'll set up the company file or the customer file in our system in some way, possibly under another folder, which might be called Bookkeeping Clients or something like that. If it's our personal folder for our personal business, then we'd want to make sure that we have our business folder set up and somewhat organized for the information we're going to put into it. So we're going to say the name of the company somewhere. We're going to, in that file, have some more documentation. Typically, the documentation we're going to want to see is that we're going to need a QuickBooks file, which we can save to the same location. If you don't do that, if we don't plan on saving the QuickBooks file to this location, then it may be somewhere just on our computer. And if we're a bookkeeper and we work on separate QuickBooks files, we could end up with a system where the system will tell us what the files are when we're in QuickBooks, but if we don't know where they are physically on the computer and QuickBooks has any kind of problem, we won't be able to find them too easily. So we want to be very careful when we make these new company files, not to just let QuickBooks put it wherever they want, or if they do, that we know where it's at, and possibly putting them in locations where we know where they're at. So I would put a company file and say, hey, this is going to be the QuickBooks file that we're going to have on file here, the data file. I'm also going to put the backup files here, and that's just for demonstration. We probably would want to put the backup files in some other location, possibly an external drive or on the cloud when we back up the files. We'll talk about that later. But the point is that we want those in at least two different folders and be able to name, locate, find the different folders. The way to add the new folders is you can just right click in the blank area, of course, and go to New Folder and then just rename those folders. Once they're set up, you can rename them by clicking on them. If you're in a Windows-based, right click and then just rename the folder, and we'll rename those folders. So right now I'm in the company file. Within that file, we're going to have the docs file that we've made, the backup files, and the data files. If you have a lot of folders, by the way, the other way to add a folder is to go to this item up here, and you'll add a new folder, or you can actually hit Control Shift N, and that'll add a folder. Within the folders, we're going to have the docs. This is going to be what was provided to us. We got a bank statement already, so we're going to have to store some of the docs that we have. Within the documents, this is for documents, I would just call it docs, documents. We're going to double click on that. And in there, I'm going to put the year that we're going to work on. We're probably going to want to sort this out possibly by year and then by month. That's going to be the system we'll set up here. If you put it all into one folder, that's fine for a while. But then of course, if you have 5 years of data in one folder, you're probably going to want to go in and organize it at some point, or it's going to be messy. If you do it from the start, a little bit easier. So we're going to say we're starting in 2019. That's what this is at. Going to make a folder just for 2019 data, and then another folder typically for permanent file information. So this will be things like related to the company name or the company number or tax ID information that is going to be the same across years. So we're not going to put it in there because we got it in 2009 because it's something that's going to be applicable to all future years. So any just normal, just overall data for the company that's going to be applicable for all time, that usually when we start the company file would go into the permanent file here. And then we're just going to go into the 2019, and typically we can break this out by date, and we could just type in January, February, March in 2019 folder. That would be fine. It might be useful to I put the 01, 02, and 19 standing for the month and then the year. Reason for doing that is that then it'll default to alphabetizing in order by month rather than alphabetizing in alphabetical order by months and getting them kind of out of order. So this is one way you can do that. So if you're in the 2019, you could just say 01 for January. 01.19 is for January 2019 for me. And the reason I'm using a point rather than a slash is because the Windows program won't allow the slash. If you're on another computer, if you're on an Apple, for example, a Mac, then I believe you can have slashes. The Windows system sees it as some kind of computer type language and doesn't like it as just being read. Now, if you don't have another folder for 2019, you might want to put this in order by first naming the year, 19, and then the month, and then the day, because that's really the order that you're going to want to see things in. So that's a common way that you'll see information rather than as a custom for us would be the month, day, and then the year at the end. Because if you have multiple years in one folder, then you're going to want to put the year first because you'd like to see all the years grouped together first, then all the months grouped together, and then all the days. If you break them out into separate years in each folder, then you probably want to break it out by month, and you're fine, or month and then year just give it some more detail. So we're going to be in January here. So within January, we're going to have, I'm going to say 2 files within here, client provided documents. That means, for example, the bank statement that we just had is going to go in there. And then we're probably going to have the stuff that we generate then, make another one, and that's going to be called reports. And so the reports are what I'm going to make. We're going to make the reports that we're going to give to the clients. We may want some other kind of breakout in detail. We might want a different folder for our invoices in January, or we might just put that into the docs here. And so we could break out that information here. So this is just one format that we can start to enter this information into the system. What we have so far is just the bank statement. So if we double click on the client provided docs, that's going to be the bank statement for January 2019. That's what we have so far. That's what we're going to work with next time in order to set up the QuickBooks file. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info.